And the Maimer went on initially to explain that it depends what level. If we're dealing with a level having to do with Seder Ishtalshlos, beginning from Chochma, or even going to Arich Anpin, which still has a connection with Seder Ishtalshlos. It's a root for Seder Ishtalshlos, Shoyrish on Tzolim. Over there, the avoida, the Torah mitzvahs that we do matter, whereas in a level that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, Atik and so on, or like in the Lashon and the Kabbalah Sfarim, Odin Yochid Shoyrish Ashirashim, over there, our Torah mitzvahs does not matter. Then he went on to say that we cannot say so. We find from a pasuk in our parsha that it says in Bishlishi, instead of speaking Bishlishi Hamadaber, speaking about what Shem Havayu will do and says and so on, that the third person is the narrator is identifying it. Rather, all of a sudden it turns around and says that the narrator himself says, I will remove the illness from amongst you, etc. Meaning, the level of the narrator, which is Hashem's very essence, is involved and affected by the avodah of a yid, that so to such a degree that he will remove any illness from amongst you, etc., etc. So therefore, we cannot just say that avodah only matters up to the level of Seder Ishtalshlos and not higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. From our parsha, it comes out that avodah is something that matters even in Hashem's very essence. So to answer that, we're holding on the bottom of the fourth page of the copies, page 167, 2 lines from the bottom. So we're beginning the answer about that question. We could say concerning this, we can answer this, though when we say that the Gemara says, what does it matter to Hashem whether a person slaughters an animal, he shechts an animal from the neck, or he shechts an animal from the throat? That's talking about specifically the idea of avoida itself, meaning hainu prote ha'avoida atzma, the specifics of the service to Hashem. That does not matter to Hashem, like using the exact example that the Gemara says, that Hashem doesn't care. In other words, in the level it's higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, whether it's the neck, how you slaughter the animal, or from the throat. Avol, top of the next page, the transformation that takes place through the avodah. The fact that through the avodah becomes the refinement of the creations. In other words, that part does matter. And that's why he says, that's why the Maimon Chazal is, what's it make a difference if you slaughter from the neck or from the throat? But the whole Torah was given to refine the creations. That aspect matters, not the details of the mitzvahs. The briyos hu briyos ba'almam, the expression is not just tziruf b'nei adam or some other expression. The idea is briyos. Briyos means just creatures. Very abchusa, a very lowly creature, like the Alter Rebbe in Tanya Perek Lamed Beis explains about Aaron would love even those that had no other quality except that they were creatures. Oyev esabriyos, he loved even those that their only quality was that they were created by Hashem. Mikol Makim, despite the fact that we're dealing here with a level of briyos, nasab gam bahem tziruf. Also, in them there becomes the refinement. What is the idea of refinement? Instead of the way the creation was, that Hashem went from ayin, took nothing and turned it into a yesh. Our job in the tziruf habriyos is to take the yesh and to effect in it a bittul, to be mahapach the yesh to the ayin. The refinement that takes place in the creations, that matters to Hashem's essence. Concerning this, he says that you will serve Havai your God. Through the level of avoidam, and not just he. In other words, he referring back to the Havaya that you served, will be the one that will bench your bread and your waters. That's talking about the bracha that comes down from Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's not sufficient, because since avoida is reaching even in Hashem's essence, so the bracha will originate from Hashem's essence, and that's why he continues. In addition to that, since by his avoida he affects the refinement of the creations, that's the idea of transformation. Hashem says, I, the narrator, Hashem's very essence, says, I will remove the illness from amongst you. This comes from the level of Hashem's essence. Now, the Rebbe is going to say, akin to the idea of taking something negative and transforming it into the positive, that is hapcha, to turn over the yesh to the ayin, that's also what Hashem does. But this will be understood what he says, I will remove illness from within you, from amongst you. Sometimes it's brought down the Torah, a different expression. Any illness that I placed in Mitzrayim, I will not place upon you. Meaning that this is preventative. It won't even happen. Seemingly, one might say that the preventative is higher than if the person was sick, then I will remove it. But here he's saying not that way. He's saying, what does it mean? That that any illness that I've placed in Mitzrayim, I will not place upon you. It's such an illness that it's possible to be, it's possible that it won't be. So Hashem says, don't worry, I will not place it upon you, that the illness won't be there. But here in our case, it's not that way. Here he says, I will remove the illness from amongst you. This means the illness is there. Still no, I will remove it. That's a much greater power. That's the power similar to our transformation down here, that we are mitzaref sabrias. We take the yesh and turn it into the ayin, the level of his hapcha. He is also doing his hapcha. Even though there is already the illness, that still in all, I will remove it. Since it's in that Eibishter himself is saying, meaning Hashem's essence is saying, I will remove it. It's referring to the third one that is speaking, the narrator, the Hashem's very essence, the Hashem's essence that can even take a machla that's already in existence and transform it. All this is by being prefaced through the avodah that you will serve Havai, your God. Through that comes down from the level of the third person, the narrator, that he brings about, that I shall remove the illness from amongst you. So now the Rebbe is going to elaborate what is it exactly that we're referring to that the person is doing in their avodah. And he's going to analyze the word va'avadatem specifically that the pasuk uses, that you're serving Hashem, you're doing divine service. What exactly are we referring to? So he's going to speak about yira and then about ava. What it says, you will serve Havai Lekechem, second paragraph on the page. The beginning of the avodah and its core, its primary thing, is the avodah with fear and awe of Hashem and acceptance of the yoke of heaven. It's a servant of a servant, the service of a servant. That's what it means, avodah, to work like a servant does. What's the idea of a servant? A servant has no importance in and of himself. Even more so, he's not even a separate entity. He's completely nullified to the master. The Chazal speak about that that the hand of the servant is like the extension of the hand of the master. He's completely part of and bottled to the master. The Gemara also says that a servant, by his very own nature, wants to be free and released from all obligations. He still has his wills, his own desires. He wants to be free and not have any obligations. He's in the way of a constriction and nullified to the master. Because of that, he does and fulfills his will. So that's like similar to the form of a sabcha. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to do it. And he does it anyway because he's mevatel himself. He nullifies himself. As it says at the beginning of Perek Memalef and Tanya, these three expressions concerning the avodah of Yira. That's the beginning of the avodah. It's the core of the avodah. Its root. Shehi avodah the Kabbalah soil. It's the avodah of accepting the yoke of heaven. Behind this means though he did not transform himself like the servant that he would like to be free, but he forced himself to do the will of his master. Still, when it comes to actually fulfilling the mitzvahs, in turning away from bad and doing good, he does his service in the way of accepting the yoke. That is the beginning of the avodah. That's why we are identifying va'avatem. Va'avatem is just do like a servant does, that he doesn't want and he still does. Why is that so? Why shouldn't the person be working on higher and loftier experiences of avodah? So he says, there's no time. You got to do what you got to do first. When it comes to what matters concerning actually fulfilling the mitzvahs, and turning away from bad and doing good, he cannot wait till he will change himself. Rather, the way the person is in his own state and situation, that he didn't change his will. He didn't change his intellect, he didn't change the midos of his emotions, the levush of his garments. Despite that his entire being is not the way it's supposed to be, he does avoid with accepting the yoke. That's the beginning of the avodah and its root and its source and its core. Let's explain in Tanya. And we see this reflected in our daily avodah as well. As it is every single day. The beginning of the avodah is not meditation, not great feelings of emotion, just bittul Hashem. I accept Hashem, I thank Hashem, I recognize Hashem, I'm bottled Hashem. Not just the beginning of the entire day, but even in davening, maybe davening should begin with bombastic understanding of Hashem. No, we also begin with the same root word from Moedes. The first thing is give thanks and praise and accept Hashem. As noch farther is bonus from Sukkah de Zimra, even before the meditations of the Sukkah de Zimra, farther in Yon from Birchas Kriyashma Shmai Nesra, before all the parts of davening, of the Barachas and Kriyashma and Kriyashma and Shemai Nesra, who Omer Hoidu Lavai, he says, thanks and praise and accepting Hashem. Bechinas Haidah, the level of admitting and acceptance. Top of this, page 169. Just like it is daily, so too it's in the avodah in general. Though he didn't change himself, didn't transform himself. As steht in seiner Zeugnis, he's still in his own wills. That the servant desires to be free. He desires to be without any yoke at all. Despite his desires to not want to do what he's supposed to do, still in all, he constricts himself and he nullifies himself to the master. And he does avodah in Kabbalah soil. So that's one facet of what the pasuk is referring to when it says "V'avadam Hashem Elokeichem." But it's not just that. There is another component to avodah as well. second paragraph, Mashkosa Avatam, where it says Vavatam, Ukmaikain. Also, where it says in the second parasha of Krishma, Mashkosa, where it says, of the Becholavavkim, you shall serve him with all your heart. Razal, the Chazal said, what avoida involves the heart? The heart is seemingly not an organ with which we do an avoida. So he says, Zutfila, the Chazal say it's talking about davening. In a similar vein, where it says you shall serve Havai your God. Isa Barambam, it's brought down the Rambam, she avoided it, feel it's the avoid of davening. The Mizem moving for this understood. The Mashakos of Avatam, where it says you shall serve. Ein hakavon ba'avoid miyira lavad. The intention is not just limited to what we said before of just avoida out of awe, because since avoida, according to the Rambam and the Maimer Chazal, etc., is going on davening, and davening entails and is even primarily about love. Kim gam havoida ma'ava. It's also vavadim refers to also the avoida out of love. How come? Maybe it's just awe. The less pulchan the Zohar says that there is no service, there's no avoida like the avoida of love. So therefore, if we're talking about davening as our avoida, we're talking about the avoida of love as well. So he says, now where davening applies is to both parts of our being. Is the idea of davening is both in the godly soul and in the animal soul. In the animal soul, the idea of davening is that Tefillah is the word teifel klicheres. He's throwing pottery, meaning he's joining together parts. So that what does that mean? That he's joining, that davening is about joining. It's the joining of the godly soul with the source of everything. The idea of davening in the world of Nefesh Habahamis, that he refines and purifies the animal soul. And elevating the sparks of his body and his portion of the world. These two matters are to be found specifically in the avodah of love. The avodah, the year of Kabbalah soil, when we're talking about the avodah of awe and accepting the yoke of heaven, the person did not change himself. He did not affect the refinement of the animal soul. One, it goes hand in hand with the other. If he doesn't do the animal soul part, so then he didn't also cause the joining with the godly soul. Why? Why is there no joining of the godly soul through the level of yira, through the level of awe? Why does he need to have specifically love, that through love he affects the refinement of Nefesh Habahamis, that through that he will have the joining of the godly soul? So he says, Hine is Chabras Nefesh Elokis, who Aidei Miller Itzarni Baruch, the joining of the godly soul is through fulfilling his will. V'Itzarni Baruch Hu Shaneshama Tavares Aguf Nefesh Habahamis. The Hashem's will is that the neshama should refine the body and the animal soul. For this purpose was the descent of the neshama down here below. The neshama itself does not need any repair. The intention of its descent is to effect a refinement of the body and the animal soul. So therefore, since this was the whole mission that the neshama was sent down for, if a person does not serve out of love, he only has awe, he did not therefore affect a refinement in the animal soul. He did not fulfill his will. He did not cause a joining of the godly soul. Only through the avodah of love, he affects a refinement of the animal soul. And automatically he affects also a joining of the godly soul with Hashem. But he doesn't affect anything. Because with awe, the avoid of the Eved, like we spoke about before, he still wants what he wants. It's Avda Bafkeda and Nicholas. He didn't change himself. The Nefesh Baham is he betakfa, the animal souls in its full force. Like we see, that there's such people that have a natural awe of heaven. With a mild and a small meditation, they could already awaken within them the awe. That through that small thinking about Hashem, they will have that basic component that we spoke about before, that he'll have the bittul and Kabbalah's oil, even though he doesn't want to. He'll have the practical yira. He will stay away from bad. He will do good. But still, in all, though he is complete, and he's turning away from bad, he's complete, and is doing good, he's complete. The animal soul remains in its full strength. And the Rebbe is going to add what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya chapter 13 that Nefesh Habam is like a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So over the many years that he is engaged with his Nefesh Habahamis, the Nefesh Habahamis got stronger, not any weaker. That's also an additional proof for the need in the avoida of love specifically. Avoidus in the word hides that have been reworked. It's just like when you're working on hides, that there has to be many different difficult parts and procedures. As men Zolnemen Afel, top of page 170, should take a piece of hide, to transform it to be able to be a parchment that you can write a part of the Torah. She's a avoida comes with avoida and great toil. In an avoida, so to the idea of avoida, is also ba'avoida v'yigia g'doil. It's also with avoida and great toil. V'imkein move on. It's understood. The avoida the yira ein za'amitis in an avoida. That the avoida of awe is not the true idea of service. Shari efshali is yir shemayin tivius kanal. Like we said, a person can be naturally someone that will have an awe of heaven. Shein's above avoida v'yigia. It doesn't come by any great toil and effort. There has to be specifically the avoida of love. Comes with great work and great toil. Is the true idea of avoida. Like we said before, the less there's no avoida like the avoida of love. That's what it's talking about in our parsha, that it says, and you shall serve. So it's talking about both of these facets of service. It includes the avoida of awe, that's the beginning and the core and the root of the all avoida. And also, not just awe, but also avoida the ava, also the avoida of love. There has to be both of them. Like explained in Kunst Avoida of the Rebbe Rashab, the need for both types of avoida, both the avoida of yira and the avoida of ava. We also see this from the beginning of Tanya, where he says that yira is the foundation and the source and the inspiration for all the mitzvahs loises, and love is the inspiration and the gives vitality in all the mitzvahs asi. That's v'avadatam that includes the avoida of awe and love of Hashem.